Hello and welcome to this new tutorial. In the previous video, we prepared our UI for lobby sessions. Today, we will start to discover the sessions. The subject will therefore be the creation of lobby sessions. I have already changed the min desired width of the size boxes for a clear display. Copy these values if you want. Before starting the creation of the sessions, I will fix something the lobby player controller, otherwise we will have problems when the replication system starts when we are in a multiplayer mode. The node on possess runs on the client and the server. For now it's not a problem, because we are still in a standalone mode. But a little later, we will be in a client-server mode. So we must specify what should run on the client and what should run on the server. Starting with the UI function setup, this function must run on client only, because the UI is specific to the client. To do this, create a custom event and name it client_setup UI, set the replication to owning client. And then make it reliable. Disconnect the pin and move the function into the event that we just created. Now in onPossess node, call the custom event. The begin play event also runs on the client and the server. I will move everything to be in onPossess node. For me, you should always start the work in the player controller when the pawn is possessed. This is the good practice. In the construction script function, I will update the value of the isPlayerControllerReady to false. So it will be true only when the possess node finishes executing. Here we have the client's set game instance event, which gives a reference of the client's game instance to the server in game mode. Actually, I'm mistaken. The server can't access the client's game instance, so that the server can retrieve the client's player card. I'm going to replace this event. The solution is to create a variable of type player card in the player controller and replicate it to the server. In this case, the game mode can call the player controller to get the player card. If you ever ask the question, but why does it currently work with a reference of the game instance when I launch my game? The answer is, it's because we are in a standalone mode, so the game instance accessed by the game mode is the same game instance of the server. But when this server will have clients, it will not work. There, make sure you call the game instance to get the player card on client side, then call the event running on the server to give it the info from the client. Promote the input to variable, then make it replicated. Move the set isPlayerControllerReady to the end of the player card update. This way we are sure the player controller has finished its work. We now need to rename the interface function to be getPlayerCard instead of getGameInstance, thus changing the returned value to be of type PlayerCard. We will now fix what has changed on the game mode side. In the check for player controller readiness function, remove these two nodes to replace them with our renamed function. We now want to store the player card of each player joining the game. We need them later. To do this, create a new variable of type map where the key is controller and the value is player card. For each player, add a key value pair to this variable. In the previous videos, I forgot to connect the player controller to the spawned characters. So connect the pins. Normally everything is good now. We want to update the player cards variable that we just created when a player leaves the lobby. So we will do it in the post logout event. Now run a test to check that everything works well. Anyway, we will see how well the game mode works when we have invited players. There you go, everything works fine. Back in the Lobby Sessions widget, we want to start the session creation process. By selecting the Create Session button, add the on-clicked event. To get the session features of Easy OSS, right-click and search for Easy OSS then Session. You will see a list of features you can use to manage sessions. To create a session, call the task Create OSS Session. The key value pairs parameter represents the filters that you can add to this session so that the client can find it by providing filters. You can then define the max number of public and private connections for this session. Anti-cheat protected means that this session has an anti-cheat system. Normally, it is not for player-hosted matches. We will see that later in the dedicated server section. Other parameters define if the session allows invitation, allows join via presence, use stats. We will see all that later. Allow join in progress. This means that if the session is in started state, can other players join it or not? The session type is an enum of 3 possible values. The types are LAN session, lobby session, or dedicated server session. For this tutorial, it will be lobby session. The use lobby voice chat if available parameter takes effect only if the type is lobby session. The member settings parameter is a list of map of key value pairs, defining the player members of this session. We will see its usefulness later. To define filters, drag the parameter then make map. There you can define whatever filters you want for this session. You have to define peers that the client can use to find your session when he launches the search. For example, with this filter the client can use it to search only lobby sessions. If the task completes successfully, it returns a structure of type OSS session. This structure contains all the information related to the session. This is a strong point of the plugin. It saves you from creating your own variables to store session information and replicate it to clients. I invite you to look at the node in detail with its output to understand things well. Now, I want to place this node in the right place, which is the game mode. The reason for this choice is that the player who will create a session will be the host, therefore the server. The game mode is the object that runs only on the server. For this it is advisable that the host creates and manages his sessions in the game mode. Anyway, you are free to place it in any object. In the game mode lobby, call the Create OSS Session node. We need to call this node from the Lobby Sessions UI when the Create Session button is clicked. For this we need to access the game mode from there, so we will do as before, a communication via the game mode interface. Create an interface for the game mode and name it B_lobby game mode. Then implement this interface from the game mode lobby. In this interface, add a function and name it Create Lobby Session. This function will take as input all the parameters of the node Create OSS Session. To know the type of each parameter, just hover the mouse over the parameter to see its type. I'll increase the speed of the video, and I'll let you add the inputs. Once finished, connect each input to its corresponding pin. Now go back to the widget. You can now call the game mode to create the session via the interface. Since it's a lobby session, I'll add filters corresponding to its type. The client can use these two filters to find all lobby sessions. I want to add an additional filter, which describes the player name of the host player. In fact, the session interface of Unreal Engine does not have a function that allows us to find the name of the player who owns the session. On the other hand, it can give us the unique user ID of the owner. In a real game, it is useful to display to clients the name of the player who owns the session. The same thing for the current number of players in the session. The interface does not have a function that gives us this information. For that, I will pass it in the filters. We will see how to update it later. You can also get the number of players by calling the game mode, which can give you the number of players. But in this case, this number is only displayable for players who are part of the game mode. For the max number of public connections, I will put 3, because I only have 3 players. I will check the Should Advertise box to create a public session. Change the type to Lobby Session, and check the Use Lobby Voice Chat box to take advantage of EOS Voice Chat. It's time to know the usefulness of member settings. When working with EOS lobby sessions, you can benefit from notifications sent by the OSS. You must add the unique IDs of the members in the session. Otherwise, the EOS backend will not be able to notify the members of the session in case of change. For example, when a player leaves or joins the session, the other players receive a notification. Note that not all OSS support member settings. If you see the message Lobby Invalid User in the EOS logs, it means that the player has not been added as a member. If the session creation is successfully completed, we will promote to variable the return session. This way we keep a reference of the session in our game mode. If the task fails, we will display an error message to the user. To do a quick test, I want to display a message on the screen and then run a test. Go to your portal, then to your product, and display the game services, then click on Lobbies. Here you can search all the lobby sessions created by the players. We will search by the attributes. The attributes are the filters that we gave to our session during creation. I will use the first key value pair I defined. Of course, you can add the other filters. When I click on Search, I have no session that matches the filter. This is normal, because for now I have no session created. We will create a session, then come back there to see again. As you see, when I click on Create Session, a message appears to inform me that the creation has been successful. Now go back to the portal and search again. You will find your session. If you click on the session, you will see all the filters and settings that you have defined for your session. Note, when the host creates a session, he joins it automatically. So you don't have to do the join process for the host. If the host leaves the game, the EOS backend will destroy the session, because the owner has left the session. That's all for this video. See you in the next one.